Greetings everyone, it's Kim Braswell here from Chemistry, and I wanted to make a quick video about the book that I've recently published called Browning Pleasantville. Our work is to make a conscious decision about how we respond to each other's stories if and or when we are brave enough to say something. It takes a whole lot of courage to admit frailty, to admit being broken, to admit being harmed or hurt. And I believe sharing those stories is part of a healing process. For those of us who are on the receiver end of those stories, it's our job to be able to listen to someone's story and to receive it as their truth instead of picking holes in one's trauma story and one's survivor story. Well, if you would have done this, well, if you would have done that, then it wouldn't have happened. Well, the fact of the matter is we have a person sitting in front of us who has experienced trauma. What are we going to do now? What is our responsibility? And so when we are entrusted with those stories of trauma, what if the best thing we can do, what if the most revolutionary thing we can do is believe their truth to be their truth? Perhaps for you, you might hear it and think you should have done something differently. Perhaps you, when you listen to it, might think you're exaggerating. Perhaps you, when you hear someone's story, might think, I think that you have responded to a situation in a bigger way than was necessary. And perhaps that's true for you, but that's not that person's story. So my question, as it relates to people as they're reading Browning Pleasantville and reading the story of trauma, this is a person-specific narrative of trauma. As I experienced it, as I perceived it, writing it during my healing process, while my feelings were still raw, and I'm writing it as a storyteller as I experienced the story happening to me. When you read this story, when you hear a story of trauma, my question for you is, how would you like to choose to receive the story? If it prickles you, is your choice to receive the story finding fault in one's trauma story, or finding out how we can empower ourselves and each other to be part of a healing component, to undo things that might have been built in a way that disempowers folks? What can we do to minimize people from feeling outcasted and isolated and like misfits in certain kinds of environments and relationships? It's a very uncomfortable process to think about our contribution to other folks' trauma, but it can be a healing component if, instead of picking apart one story, we listen to it critically and figure out what our role is in making our relationships and our environments safer than they were before. We have a choice.